What if I told you that the most powerful men in the Jehovah's Witnesses religion aren't afraid of Satan, persecution, or the world outside? What if their greatest fear is you waking up? In this 4-part series, the 12 greatest fears of the governing body, we are going to uncover hidden fears and anxieties that haunt the leadership of the Jehovah's Witnesses. Not the fears that they preach about on platforms, on JW broadcasting. The fears that they can never admit to anyone. And the terrifying impossibility of what happens when these fears come true. We will count down from fear number 12 to fear number 1, revealing 3 things: what the fear is, why the governing body fears that fear, and what they are doing to stop that fear from becoming a reality. We are going to answer the question that they dread the most. What happens when all these fears become a reality? This is more than a series. This is a countdown to the JW collapse. Not just collapse, total collapse. And this is Tell Me Dr. K, channel on which we discuss matters of theological nature and deal with any issue that we believe contradicts the Bible. If you are new on this channel, my name is Dr. K. I invite you to sample many of the videos that are on this channel. Welcome to episode 1, 12 fears the Jehovah's Witnesses leaders are desperate to keep hidden. Let's begin with fear number 12, worldly temptations and moral freedom. So what is the fear? The fear is that the members of the Jehovah's Witnesses will begin to enjoy the world out there, that they'll find freedom, joy, and purpose without their religious control. So what is the fear here? The fear is that the members of the Jehovah's Witnesses will begin to enjoy the outside world, that members will find freedom, joy, and purpose without religious control. Why do they fear that? You have to understand that the worldview that the governing body of the Jehovah's Witnesses has created gives the organization power, which gives the idea that the world outside is wicked, corrupt, and doomed. And therefore, everyone in it who is not part of the Jehovah's Witnesses will be destroyed together with the world. And therefore, to be safe, you have to remain within the Jehovah's Witnesses organization, which is called Jehovah's organization.
So while we eagerly await Jehovah's bringing his enemies to the end, very sobering point from James chapter 4 that you'll remember. Let's find James and what he writes here. James chapter 4, verse 4, adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Whoever, therefore, wants to be a friend of the world is making himself an enemy of God. So, what a clear warning. We don't want to have any friendship, whether socially or on social networks, with Jehovah's enemies. We're not friends of the world. We're Jehovah's friends. We're looking at him as our closest and most precious friend, and we never would want Jehovah to view us as an enemy. So, in conclusion, let's go back to that opening psalm that we looked at here. But the wicked will perish, the enemies of Jehovah will vanish like glorious pastures. Particularly, they will vanish like smoke. So I thought this would be a nice memory aid to this verse stay in the mind. Here's what Jehovah's promising. That's Jehovah's enemies. They're going to vanish like smoke.
If they stop fearing the world outside, the Watchtower loses grip on birthdays, holidays, music, friendships, and dating. Now, these aren't rules, they are barriers, because moral freedom leads to emotional freedom. Is this video making sense to you? And if it is, kindly do me just one favor. Like, subscribe, and hit the notice bell so that when I upload the next video, you will be notified. And you'll be making other people to know about the governing body's 12 greatest fears that keep them awake at night. So the Jehovah's Witness has made the fear of the world as one of their selling points. They ensure that they are made distinct from the outside world or from other religious organizations. Here is the clip.
Another, we repudiate any form of prejudice, which is very divisive. We reject any form of nationalism. Well, those are just a few examples of how we can promote this oneness that Jehovah and Jesus love, and how different it is from the fragmented, visible part of Satan's organization. I mean, Satan's organization is fragmented nationally, racially, politically, socially, and every other way, isn't it? And evidently, apparently, obviously, the fragmented condition of the visible part of Satan's organization is a reflection of what exists in the invisible part of Satan's organization. See, Satan's a rebel. The demons are rebels. They are divisive, and you can be sure they have no unity among themselves. None between Satan and the demons, between the individual demons. But how we love this oneness, and as we contribute to it, and as we've had pointed out recently, we're one organization with an earthly part, a heavenly part, and as we contribute to this oneness, Jehovah and Jesus will love us and they will bless us.
That's why people get surprised when they hear that they don't celebrate birthdays, they don't celebrate holidays, they don't salute the flag. They are restricted in terms of the kind of music they can listen to, who to date, what kind of books they can read, and the friendships that one can actually have. Here is the clip.
The organization had so many strict rules, and you found them so difficult to follow, just not being able to read other material or the way you dress, all that stuff. But there are 8 million Jehovah's Witnesses in the world, right, supposedly. So most of them, I guess, are fine with those strict rules.
When you really understand to the level that Jehovah's Witnesses are micromanaged in every aspect of their life and how controlled they are, even though they'll say that they're not and they have all their personal freedoms, you don't. Like, you are so controlled and so micromanaged. It literally is like, you know, they talk so much about, oh, the new system coming and paradise. Like, it's actually here, right? You're just trapped in purgatory right now. You're trapped in hell. Get out of there and you can actually have, you know, some joy and happiness, right? And get that out of your life before it's too late. The saddest part is all these people are putting off having a happy life for some future paradise to come.
Now, the problem is that when you taste freedom, you stop hungering for approval, and that is a religious approval from the elders. Let's look at how they prevent this fear from becoming a reality. They do so by teaching that the world is under Satan's control, what they call this system of things. So anything that is not Jehovah's Witness is lumped together as this system of things. They also paint a picture that any person who is associating with the people outside the Jehovah's Witnesses is spiritually weak, and also that such a behavior is spiritual failure. They also try to prevent this by defining moral success as a strict obedience. And finally, they prevent this by punishing any deviation with guilt, isolation, or disfellowshipping. One person who watched one of my videos said they also target you, they label you as a person to be watched. Here's a quote from the Watchtower. World entertainment promotes attitudes and values that are in direct opposition to Jehovah's standards. You hear that? It's important for you to know that Jehovah and Jehovah's organization are conflated. You obey Jehovah by obeying Jehovah's organization, aka the governing body. Here is the clip. What if I told you that Jehovah's Witnesses actually do not worship Jehovah? What if behind the name there is actually something more human than divine that is pulling strings?
You talking to me right now, it's like you're talking to Satan.
That's correct. I'm attacking God, is what they've said about
In the
me.
view of the church, sitting down with us right now.
Yes.
So the line between the organization and God are so blurred that these words are used interchangeably. And every time they are talking about the organization or the governing body, they immediately hear them talking about Jehovah. It's so subtle that subconsciously, without even members knowing, you find that the line between the organization and Jehovah is so blurred that when you're talking about one, you are actually talking about the other. This conflation is not an accident. It is deliberate. So it's a psychological ploy where members think that if they leave the organization, they're actually leaving Jehovah, because the God of the Jehovah's Witnesses is confined within the organization. He doesn't exist anywhere else. So you can't save him alone. You can't save him elsewhere. You can only save him in the confinement of the Jehovah's organization. So Jehovah does not exist outside the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. And this is so subtle that they will not say it, but actually imply it. Now, the story of thinking that you've been serving Jehovah all your life and all of a sudden realize that you are not serving Jehovah is exemplified by an ex-member of the Jehovah's Witnesses by the name of Blue, who appeared on the Light Over Dark channel. Here is a clip of Blue actually highlighting exactly what I'm talking about.
By my assessment, the governing body, the leadership of Jehovah's Witnesses, have taken the place of Jehovah God.
Sure.
And the reason I say that is all in the language that's employed by the members. Like if you asked a witness and you said, hey, you think the governing body is Jehovah, they're going to say, no, that's ridiculous. Of course I don't. But every single thing that refers to the organization is also somehow referring to Jehovah. I'll give you a couple examples. So if you're a witness and you're reading the Watchtower and the Watchtower says you need to follow Jehovah. Following Jehovah means following the organization. If you want to serve Jehovah, that means serving the organization. If you want to listen to Jehovah, that means listening to the organization. And I feel like it's especially seen in something that people have actually said to us since this has happened. If you leave the organization, you have left Jehovah. Mm-hmm. So in every single time you turn around, the organization and Jehovah are always conflated.
Yep.
Always. So, while a witness would say, no, of course the organization is not Jehovah, in effect it is. The authority with which the organization speaks is the authority by which, if Jehovah God himself were speaking, that's what it is.
Yeah, it's unconscious. You don't actually fathom it. It's just running in the background.
What they fear isn't sin, it's satisfaction. Because a satisfied member is a free one. Let's go to fear number 11. Other Christian churches. Babylon the Great. What is the fear here? The fear is that Jehovah's Witnesses will join or start listening to the doctrines and the teachings of other Christian denominations, that they'll be exposed to different interpretation of the scripture, Christian freedom, and grace over guilty. Now, why do they fear this? Because evangelicals especially offer something that Jehovah's Witnesses do not have: emotional connection, worship experience, community love, and a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Because in the Jehovah's Witness organization, you have to have a relationship with the organization. And it's only through the organization, the Watchtower Society, or in full, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania, that you can know God, that you can serve God, that you can have a relationship with Jehovah. Now, it's interesting that the governing body has labeled all Christian denominations as Babylon the Great from Revelation chapter 17, the empire of false religion. Being associated with any other Christian denomination is a disfellowshipping offense. This isn't a doctrine, it's defense. You know, I've always wondered why Jehovah's Witnesses can enter a nightclub, can enter a beer hall or a tavern, but they cannot enter a church. I was so shocked when our young sister was getting married. My young brother, who is a Jehovah's Witness, could not even enter the church where the service was taking place. And at that time, I didn't understand. I was just wondering, what sort of religion is this? But I have discovered their greatest fear is that you know the truth. If the only way to keep members is banning comparison, what does it say about that product? How do the governing body prevent that fear from being realized? They do the following. Number one, they demonize all other religions and calling them Babylon the Great. Here is the clip.
What is Babylon the Great? The Bible's answer. Babylon the Great, described in the book of Revelation, is the world's collective body of false religions, which God rejects. Although those religions differ in many respects, in one way or another, they all lead people away from the worship of the true God Jehovah. Keys to identifying Babylon the Great. 1. Babylon the Great is a symbol. The Bible describes her as a woman and a great prostitute, having a name that is a mystery, Babylon the Great. False religion actually leads them to worship other gods. The Bible calls this spiritual prostitution. Beliefs such as the Trinity and the immortality of the soul, and practices such as the use of images in worship, date back to ancient Babylon and continue to permeate false religion. These religions also blend their worship with love for the world. The Bible refers to this form of unfaithfulness as spiritual adultery.
By instilling fear that God is going to destroy anyone outside the Jehovah's Witnesses organization, by warning that even visiting a church is considered as spiritual adultery. Here is a clip of a woman who started studying with the Jehovah's Witnesses and yet got employed as a secretary at the church. Listen to what she said. Here is a clip.
Right about the time I started studying the Bible, an opportunity came up for me to start doing secretarial work at a church. I was the one who cared for all of the money that the church would receive. But at that moment, I didn't see any problem with staying where I worked. One night at a meeting, I was talking with an elder, and he told me that I wouldn't even be able to give student parts at the Kingdom Hall, since I was still working as a secretary at the church. That made me very sad, because I found myself just receiving guidance from Jehovah and learning his truth, but I was not giving back anything to him despite what he was doing for me. However, I have to admit that I still hadn't completely made up my mind. Since my husband had back surgery and wasn't able to work at the time, we had our little daughter to care for. So I kept thinking, what should I do? Right now, this is the only money we have coming in. I had great help from my instructor. Just as Jehovah doesn't force us, she didn't force me. As she told experiences and showed me in the Bible what really pleases Jehovah, it made me realize that I had to make a decision. As my Bible study got deeper, I began to realize that I really was already loving Jehovah and wanted to please him. Before Jehovah, my conscience was already affecting me. I had to make a decision on his side. That's exactly what I did.
And Christian denominations, they fear most evangelicals, because evangelicals know the Bible more than the Jehovah's Witnesses. And because of this, they treat them as spiritual enemies. They fear that if you attend another church, you feel loved, not judged. And that feeling will expose the emptiness they work so hard to hide. Let's go to fear number 10, media exposure and investigations. What is the fear? They fear that journalists, survivors, and courts will expose hidden abuse within the organization. Now, one of the things that you have to realize with Jehovah's Witnesses is that they've branded themselves as a religion that is better than any other, especially in comparison with other Christian denominations. So everything they do is to try to prove that they are better than others. Now, it is interesting that they claim to be better than others, and yet they can't stand comparison. And yet they can't stand their members being exposed to the teachings of other Christian denominations. So, because of this, the public will learn about child sexual abuse, financial secrecy, shunning policies, legal tactics to silence whistleblowers. Now, why do they fear this? Because public exposure means loss of the brand identity. Because every headline is a crack in their hammer. Because the world will start seeing them for who they are, just any other religious organization. And by so doing, they will lose the moral high ground. The holier-than-thou attitude they have crumbles. How do they prevent this from becoming a reality? By calling media coverage as persecution, as biased. Here is a clip from David's Plan.
Negative reports about Jehovah's Witnesses in the media. Now here's a good principle to follow. Proverbs 14 and verse 15. I'll give you a moment. Proverbs chapter 14 and verse 15. It says, "The naive person believes every word, but the shrewd one ponders each step." Some people believe everything they read in the newspaper or see on TV. Do you? Should you? If it's in the newspaper, it must be true, right? Not necessarily. Remember this. Reporters have a deadline to meet, and a reporter may not have the time or the inclination to check the facts. Or the reporter may have written a balanced article, but then the editor changes it. Maybe the editor doesn't like Jehovah's Witnesses, or he's been misinformed about us. Now, it's bad enough if people in the world believe everything they read in the newspaper, but brothers, let's not be among them. Let's not be naive. Let's consider things carefully. Similarly, sometimes there's a TV program about Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, a few of these programs are balanced and fair. Many, or I dare say most, are not. And when they're not, you'll often find that the producers started out with a negative view of Jehovah's Witnesses, and then they looked for information to support their prejudice. So, whom did they turn to? Apostates and the clergy. From them, they got suggestions for people to interview, and we know what those people would say. At the very last minute, they may ask the brothers for comment just to give an appearance of fairness, but the program wasn't designed to be fair. It was designed to be unfair. It was slanted against Jehovah's Witnesses.
They do this by discouraging members from reading outside sources. A lady by the name of Sarah, Light Over Dark Ministries YouTube channel, said after she woke up, she wondered, said, why do they prevent the members from accessing information? The truth should be able to stand scrutiny. So if they can tell you never even to do something, not even to watch, not even to read any material, it means they are hiding something. They don't want you to discover the lie that they've told you. Here's the clip.
Is there anything that kind of was like, it should have rubbed me the wrong way back then and it didn't, but now I'm like, wow, I can't believe I thought that was either acceptable, normal, yada yada.
The way they fearmonger into looking and doing research, like it is so surprising now how did I think that was okay, for so many years. As before I woke up, there was a point when I was questioning that started to bother me more. But before that, it didn't, and it's like the truth should be able to withstand a lie. So we shouldn't have to be afraid if these people are actually, lying about this stuff, then that should hold, the truth should hold up under that.
They don't fear lies. They fear the receipts. They do this by calling media coverage as persecution, by discouraging members from reading outside sources, by using the legal department to block or store all lawsuits, by demanding secrecy and loyalty in abuse cases. Here is a clip by David Splain talking about poison.
First, let's talk about apostasy, and we'll call it spiritual poison. Now think about poison. What's the best way to avoid being poisoned? Well, we have to recognize poison when we see it and then avoid it. And the same principle applies to teachings that could destroy our faith. And that's not always easy. Now, not many of our brothers and sisters would deliberately get involved with apostates, but it could happen without our realizing it. We receive letters at times from brothers and sisters who are troubled by something they saw on a web page, an accusation, a rumor about the society or about the organization. And the problem is, they had no idea that apostates were behind it. It's tricky, because the apostates don't advertise, "You are now on an apostate web page." Another person might say, "Well, I can see where those warnings about apostates apply to so-and-so. He's weak, but don't worry about me. I'm spiritually strong. I can handle it." That's like a weightlifter, thinking that he can drink a vial of poison and it won't hurt him because he's so big and strong. We are not so strong, so spiritual, so intelligent, that we can't be affected by the poison of apostate ideas.
The real case. The Australian Royal Commission revealed that over 1,000 alleged perpetrators were never reported to authorities. The governing body called the inquiry biased. Watchtower quote: Satan's system will use every means to attack God's people, including dishonest media. But the truth doesn't need defending. Only control does. Some years back, a friend of mine whom we are sharing a house with said, "A lie goes half the world just when the truth is putting on shoes." But Jehovah's Witnesses cannot risk their truth being challenged. So, what do the Jehovah's Witnesses really fear? That you might enjoy life outside, that you might feel welcome in another church, that the world will see what happens behind closed doors of the kingdom halls. But these are just external threats. In our next episode, we look inward to fears that target the mind, the friends, the groups, and the future. We will look at the fears that could destroy the Watchtower Society. There you are. That is the end of episode 1 about the 12 greatest fears of the governing body. If you have enjoyed this video, you've driven benefit from it, kindly do me a favor. Like, subscribe, and smash the notice bell that when I upload the next video, you will receive a notification. If you want to add anything else which I've left out, kindly put it in the comments below. If you disagree with me as a Jehovah's Witness, you can also put your comments below. But don't just give a general statement. Please make it clear. You need to address a specific challenge. One person just said, "You are just slandering the Jehovah's Witness." I responded to him and said, "Can you specifically tell me which part of the video considers slander?" He came back and said, no, since every time you post a video, it is against the Jehovah's Witnesses. I said, no, that's not what you said. You are now moving away from the discussion. I'm saying, can you tell me anything I said in the video that you think is slander? The man went quiet. Another one just said, the video that came out today, these are all lies, without being specific. So to continue to part 2 of this video, click on this link. To watch other videos about the impending collapse of the Jehovah's Witnesses, click on this link. To watch all the episodes in the series, click on this link.